here. Bama 247 and affiliates of 247 Sports. Early signing day is quickly approaching here, and I know it's weird to insert that in when there's so much other drama going on in the college football world, CFP, rivalry weekend, whatnot. But we have to touch on the subject at some point, and so that's why we brought Brett in here today. Brett, it's great to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've been talking about getting together, doing this for a long time, and it's fitting. You said it. It's a lot of the attention is on obviously the coaching carousel, which we kind of talked about before we hit live here, and college football playoff discourse. And I will say the committee is definitely doing its job in the sense of creating a conversation in November and then some. But yeah, like you said, I'm the recruiting guide for Bama 247 at 247 Sports, and recruiting matters. It certainly does, and whether the calendar is very jumbled with the portal and all of that, but it's crunch time for a lot of these staffs, and certainly for Alabama to get pen to paper here in the next less than 2 weeks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've seen it week in, week out. I was sitting right near the recruits on Saturday when I was at the Bama game. You see them sitting over there, and it's kind of like that developing layer, that developing story on the side that we're all very focused on the game, but over there, that's your future. And so, you got and there's a lot of work going on when it comes to that going on in the background right now that isn't really talked about just because of everything else. But I'm happy to get into that here today. Excuse me, with early sign day approaching. What would you say are a few of Alabama's top targets heading into early signing day?
Yeah, it's, there's not many left. I always like to kind of bring it back to earlier in the cycle, and something I heard and was kind of continuing to convey with this new scholarship, I guess, lack of a limit. You were going to see some programs go after, have 30 plus guys in the class. USC, I believe, is at 35. Georgia, I think, will probably end up at around 30. Alabama, that was never going to be the case. They were going to continue to kind of keep it status quo. Always envisioned probably 20 to 25 in the class. Right now, Alabama's sitting at 23 total commits, ranked number 2 in the 247 rankings. There's not a whole lot of guys left. I think if you could single out one, it's Samson Gash out of Michigan, been committed to Michigan State since the summer. Got back down to Alabama after picking up a on-campus offer in June. This is a guy who runs a 10.41 100-meter dash. So speed, and more speed coming out of Samson Gash. And he came back for an official visit a couple weekends ago. And, I said it going in, it's apples to oranges, and no disrespect to Michigan State, but what Alabama as a program can kind of offer you holistically compared to Michigan State, there's really not much of a comparison. And coming out of that trip, he told me, hey, Alabama's giving me continued thoughts. I'm continuing to think about them. They knocked it out of the park. They treat me like family. So there's really no change there. He's continuing to kind of say, hey, I'm focused on my playoff run over with Central Catholic in Michigan. They're kind of rolling right now. It's fun to watch him it's fun to watch the other teams not put a safety over the top on him. I mean, he just runs right by him, checks all the boxes that Alabama is looking for. And I know Alabama fans may say, hey, they've got 3 commits in the class at the position, but they're trying to add more. And this is a guy who has elite speed. But I can't imagine what he's kind of going through, not only just with this playoff run, but also thinking about his future. Michigan State, again, was that early eval, the early offer. He has those relationships. He's close. He's very close to that campus, obviously. But again, and he said it, and you could say anybody could. Alabama is a different animal, and you have an opportunity to play at Alabama, you might want to take it. So that's a guy I'm certainly tracking. And then another guy who came up on the radar about a week and a half ago with an offer, the number 2 JUCO defensive lineman in the country, and I'm just going to say it's David C. because his last name I don't want to butcher. It's a very very long name, but he's a guy who's 6'8", only been playing football for 1 year. He was a basketball player, got injured, flipped to go to play football, and has kind of seen his recruitment take off. He's out in Los Angeles. He'll be down this weekend for Alabama, Eastern Illinois, an official visit. So that's a guy I'm looking at, and I point him out because he's along the defensive line, and that's obviously a big talking point for Alabama fans, both on the current roster and who follow recruiting. It's always, where's these where are these big bodies? Where are these big bodies? He is definitely one of those. Again, 6'8", 87-inch wingspan. So just kind of a freak. And he's another one that going into the trip, he's taken official visits to UCLA, Kentucky. Excuse me, not UCLA, Kentucky, Arizona State. I don't know if those programs can compare to what Alabama can offer you just from everything that, again, they hold it from campus to on-field experience to in the facility, the strength and conditioning. So would not surprise me if this guy comes out with rave reviews, and will definitely be one to watch. But again, there's not many more names. I think those are kind of the two you're circling right now. And it's really a testament to this staff to, get guys in the fold early and not having them budge. I've put it up on my Twitter, over on my site multiple times. It's rare to have 5-star talents and high 4-star talents so locked in since the summer. I mean, Xavier Griffin, the #1 linebacker in the country, Jordan Edmonds, the #1 corner in the country, Xavier Crowell, who just earned his 5th star, Zion Gibson, and so on and so forth, have lived in Tuscaloosa on Saturdays in the fall, and they all talk about it. It's like, it's one thing to say, yeah, this group is close, and you kind of hear that over and over, but for them to continue to be on campus together, I mean, majority of the class every single weekend is taking a picture with Kalen DeBoer. They're developing those relationships. So it's very rare to have these guys so locked in, and it's, again, one thing to say it, but it's shown over and over. And I joke about a lot of those guys I named, and a couple others would have signed, made things official on the day of their commitment. So other heavy hitters, obviously you're dealing with top ranked kids that are committed to Alabama, other heavy hitters continuing to push and try for, potential visits, but that just hasn't happened, more or less.
What would you say is leading to that buy-in right now? Because I as an Alabama fan, I love hearing that, and like you said, it is very rare. So what do you think that the recipe is for that right now?
I think it's one, a lot of these kids around the country. I mean, you've seen it. They followed Alabama. Alabama was the program, and it still is one of the top premier programs. You have that, and then you also have, I think, the buy-in from the current roster. That kind of shows you what this staff is like. And you talk with parents, you talk with current recruits, commits. Everything is about like family, family, family. From Kalen DeBoer to the woman sitting at the secretary to the janitor. Like, I always like to tell this story. Nolan Wilson, who was picked up his first offer from Alabama, and that was a big reason for his continued commitment, and with schools like Miami and others continue to go after him. And obviously, a defensive lineman who's a top 100 player, and you got Miami going after him. There's kind of stuff to follow just in the NIL world. But I go back to his summer official visit. He told me, he's like, they knew what my little sister's allergies were. It's like, it's just a whole approach. It's family first before football, and I think that's really been a big part of it. And again, I say it over and over, the more times you can get commits on campus, the better, and that's just been the case. And also, I'm kind of rambling here, but going back to the summer, and I think you saw it, like these official visit photos, it was, the recruits, and then half the defense was in the picture, or half the offense was in the picture. It's like, if these guys are, wanting me, I can relate to them on a different level than the coaches as well. But it's just family. I think if I had to pinpoint one thing, a lot of these, parents of commits talk about how, they go out to dinner and they meet, Maurice Linguist's wife and his kids, and our kids get along and things like that. It's just upfront, it's honest. And I think what's also noteworthy is, specifically, I guess, kind of, for example, at the quarterback position, it's very open from the start that, hey, Jet, we want you, but there's going to be another quarterback in this class. And that openness, I think, was specifically just at the position room. And, there's some, of course, everybody's got your human nature. You want to be the guy in the room, of course. But I think the openness from Nick Sheridan, for example, just kind of from the jump, hey, we want 2 in the class. At the tight end position, there's, kind of some movement there, but Max Sutter knew he was the guy, but they were going to potentially go after another guy as well. I think it's just that openness, that honestness, and Kalen's just an approachable guy. He's you kind of hear he's laid back, and maybe for Alabama fans that doesn't sit well, but you've seen him kind of turn the corner, both with his walkouts at Bryant-Denny, slapping the goalpost, and he's showing emotion, and he's starting to cuss now. I think there's even a bigger buy-in with him. And again, it's just family, to simply be put.
Now, and that's how you go about building that foundation, right? I mean, that's how you achieve that buy-in, is that real family feel, and it all leads to attention to detail. Like you said, knowing a player's little sister's allergies. I mean, that's how you connect on that level and build those relationships from the ground up. And one thing you touched on too that I think it's huge is the transparency, because I feel like there are some programs out there that it's almost like a sales thing. It's like
Yeah.
you'll do whatever it takes to get it across the finish line. But if there's certain concerns that you don't address early on, guess what? It's going to come back to bite you later on. If you make promises that you can't deliver, if you're not open and honest about when a player is going to begin getting PT, you're going to have to face that at some point. And so I love the fact that Alabama's recruiting staff and coaching staff overall addresses those issues at hands before too much time elapses, and just tells players straight up, hey, you're not going to start your first year. If I were a player, I would love to hear that instead of saying, oh, you're going to get this, you're going to get that, and then fall camp comes along and I'm third on the depth chart. What the hell? That's not what I was told.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good point. It kind of brings me back. I'm kind of running through the file cabinet in my head right now. It goes back to Keelan Russell's official visit all the way back in the summer. Obviously, was talking to his mother about it, and she continues to bring it up. They were sitting in Kalen DeBoer's office, and it was something that helped really kind of seal the deal. It was Kalen had told Keelan, hey, close your eyes. What jersey do you see yourself running out in a tunnel with at the college level? And if it's not Alabama, that is okay with us. We want you to be fully comfortable. We understand your circumstance. Obviously was committed to SMU at the time, but we want you to feel comfortable. And April Moore, his mother, continues to bring that up. Keelan also brought that up in real time. It was like just open, honest transparency, and then sticking with the quarterback, because you brought it up there and it kind of jogged my memory. Obviously, we're talking about the 2026 class, but who has 2 commits. But looking ahead, 2027, they've got Trent Seaborn in the fold. Was talking with him, was talking with his father. It's very clear. It has been made very clear from the jump. They want 2 quarterbacks in the class, and obviously a guy that's been tied to Alabama over the last couple months, both from my site and my reading and kind of everywhere else, is the number 1 quarterback in the country, in Elijah Haven. He told me the same thing. His father told me the same thing. It's one thing to say, hey, you're going to be our guy from the jump. And I thought it was very interesting. Elijah Haven's dad said, some of these kids aren't ready. My kid may not be ready from the jump. So it pays to have that competition. And it's just, again, that speaks to the type of recruit, the type of athlete, the type of family that this staff is going after. They're not going, if there's a recruit that wants money to come visit just to get on campus, or is saying XYZ amount of money and it's just not in their realm, they're not going to play around with them. And it's if you're here for the money, you're not here for the right reasons. And I also like to kind of say, that seems to be the perception around the world, around like the country, to the casual recruiting fan, and rightfully so. I understand it. There's crazy deals out there, numbers that get thrown out and stuff, but the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio States of the world, they're still getting guys that are football players that want to be developed. The proof is in the pudding. Of course, there's other programs that are, highest bidder will take you, so on and so forth. But that's why I like to also point out, and I think, again, it speaks back to how I said these higher ranked guys, Xavier Griffin, Jordan Edmonds, Cedarian Morgan, they weren't going anywhere. They committed to Alabama and they were done. They went about their process in the winter, the spring, and the summer, and they made their final call. And I think it speaks to this staff as well. It's just rare. I've said it 100 times all around the show, but it's rare. And it goes back to what you said with the transparency from the jump. And we're going to take X amount of guys at this position, but we want you and you're a piece of us. But also find that balance of, hey, you may not start, but here's the development track for you, and things like that.
Well, and it speaks volumes when you can be transparent like that, right? I mean, it gets players to buy in. The whole family elements, I think, has been huge for Alabama, and it's recruiting, and then just getting football guys in there, and like you said, there are plenty of them out there. I know there can be that perception of,
right,
everybody's in for the money now ever since the inception of NIL. But and that's not Alabama, but all over. I mean, there are still plenty of guys out there who are ready to run through a wall for sport, and so it's important to have a process in place to vet that out. And speaking of process, would you say that the recruiting process and approach is similar between Saban staff and DeBoer, or do you see more differences?
I think I see more similarities than there are differences. It was something I kind of heard about this staff, maybe a little bit different in the sense that something I heard about this staff when they first got hired. They're not just offering kids to offer kids. Like, you will not find 10 offers out, to the quarterback position. I'm like the 2027 class, there's 4 quarterbacks that have been offered, and there's a very good chance 2 of the 4 that they offered are in the fold when it's all said and done, when we're talking a year from now in the 27 cycle. But that's one thing that I kind of noticed and have continued to notice, that if you get an offer and Kalen DeBoer meets with you, you are a take. They're not wasting your time. They're not wasting their time. I think that's been a kind of maybe a big difference a little bit. But I think there's still a lot of similarities. Again, it's still Alabama, and Kalen DeBoer has talked about that, like embracing the culture and kind of leaning into it in year one. I thought, year one was a little bit different because you've got, lack of a better term, damage control, kind of retaining your roster and things like that. But now you've seen him, fully embrace, obviously, the Alabama tradition. He did that from the jump, but I think there's a skill. Having the right people around you, I think, is also a skill. I think Kalen DeBoer has mastered that with Courtney Morgan as the general manager, Jatavis Sanders, the director of recruiting, Aaron Hodges, Tony Jones, a couple other guys in the recruiting department that just can absolutely relate to these guys. And we've seen other programs and other coaches kind of come in and take over and maybe take some stuff down from the wall, completely start from scratch. And that hasn't really been successful at a lot of places. Kalen DeBoer brought in his guys, but also kept, a Robert Gillespie, a Freddie Roach, who are so crucial in the recruiting ranks. Jeff Allen, who, if you're hired by Nick Saban for 17 years, you're doing something right. Jeff Allen, and he was crucial in the winter months, a year ago. He's been crucial on visits. A lot, the amount of recruits that bring him up specifically. David Ballou in the strength and conditioning department. Kerrigan Johnson, who was there, who is kind of the GOAT, I think, in relating to parents, was there with Nick Saban for a while. She's still there. It's the same woman at the secretary's desk, right, when you walk in. So I think it's a combination of obviously having your own identity, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and use those however many first round draft pick jerseys are on the wall. Use the Heismans and use all the trophies. And I'm laughing because still to this day, you got commenters out there saying DeBoer's riding off Nick Saban's coattails with the history and stuff. It's like, would you not? It didn't go away. There's a reason these guys are in the room in the first place, and we talked about it earlier in the show. It's that Alabama logo, the championships, the history, and a lot of these guys grew up Alabama fans, and you're not going to ignore that. You're going to use that fully to your advantage.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you have those tools at your disposal, you're only inflicting harm on yourself if you don't use it. But what I've respected a lot about what DeBoer has done was that he has injected his own identity into the building, and I like that. Like as far as changing how some of the rooms look, changing approach somewhat, and then of course staff churn when he first came in. But all of the main people and the crucial elements of that building are still very much intact. I interned with the team back in 2023, and
okay,
all those names that you mentioned stood out to me as people that are really the glue of the program, and you can't afford to lose. Some coaches go in there and just clear house of everybody. Kalen DeBoer is smart enough to retain those people. Your Gillespies, your Freddie Roaches. I mean, your Jeff Allens. He knew to hold on to those people, because if you lose them, that's your blow.
And I'm glad, and you brought it up right there. It's obviously these kids are here to play football, and they're that's their main focus. But the parents matter just as much. And if my kid gets hurt, who's in charge? And that's Josh Allen. And can I continue to still reach out to him? And if my son's struggling in school, can I still reach out to Kerrigan Johnson or the other academic advisors? Those guys are all still there. So again, I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but it's a skill to have the right people around you. And I just can't say enough that Kalen DeBoer had the right people, I guess, in his ear as well, saying, hey, keep this group, keep that group. And well, also, again, making those changes. Courtney Morgan, obviously the GM now, and that's obviously, there wasn't necessarily a GM for Nick Saban, I guess, for those years, obviously, since the inception of NIL, they've had that, but he has his own way of doing things. And that recruiting department, I've got a couple buddies in there. They've said, there's a little bit different process of doing that. And that is what is brought Kalen DeBoer to where he is in terms of, talent evaluation and Courtney Morgan. So you're not going to mess that up, but you got to you're not going to mess that up in the sense you're going to bring that over and there may be some changes, but again, you're not going to change all the I don't want to say extracurriculars, but everything outside of football, the academics, the campus, the Brian Hall, the points of communication. If I need to get in touch with my son and checking in here, can I check transcripts? Everything's the same there. So again, it's really well done what they're doing, and they're continuing to do it. Again, they've got the number 2 class in the country right now.
And it is that way for a reason, and I hope that it remains that way. There's no coincidence that is still happening. The one thing that I want to ask, though, is, so we have a game looming over us here in a little bit over a week. Alabama and Auburn. We'll address the elephant in the room there. After a loss, we know how Alabama is. I mean, it's like the walls are falling down,
yep.
The world's on fire. I mean, that's and I, as a fan, I try not to buy into that too much because it's very overreactionary. We're a team just like anybody else. We're going to lose. It is what it is. You learn from it. You move on. It's part of sports. But this Auburn game in particular, I can't ignore the fact that there's a lot of implications tied into this thing, because if Alabama is to lose this game, you're now looking at another season below double-digit wins, which you saw Nick Saban very seldom have at Alabama. You're looking at a loss to Auburn, which in any year is inexcusable, just because it's Auburn, and you're looking at likely Alabama falling short of the CFP for the second year in a row and Kalen DeBoer's second season. The optics aren't great there, and so and look, I think Alabama's going to win, but I'm just asking, in the case of a loss, does that impact recruiting in the future?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think so, and I don't think everything you said I agree with. If Alabama is to lose this game at Auburn and miss out on the playoff, I mean, Kalen DeBoer thought his seat was hot last year. It will be as hot as it possibly could be. Now, I don't think there's anything going to happen at that point, but I think it kind of goes back to what I said. If you're a commit and you're reacting to a loss like this, especially this late in the process, because that'll now be, that's in the 20 what in a couple of Iron Bowl, and then right around a week until signing day. So I think if you're talking about 2026 class specifically, I don't think there's going to be any worry. I think if there is a guy who decommits after Alabama potentially loses to Auburn, I think you kind of say in the nicest way possible, see ya. Like, if that is what you're banking your recruitment on, I don't know if we really want you in the program to begin with. I couldn't give you a name on this class of the 23 commits that I would kind of imagine that a loss would affect their standing as Alabama. I go back to, talking with Jordan Edmonds after the Florida State loss. He kind of laughed in my face. And actually, I talked with him at Oklahoma after the Oklahoma loss. He laughed in my face. Talked to Xavier Griffin. He kind of laughed in my face. It's like these kids, and I tell them all the time, and I've said it on podcasts, I may get killed by the Alabama fans, but a lot of them are 16, 17, 18 years old. They're a lot more level-headed than a lot of these Alabama fans, which, again, I understand it. It's what Alabama is, and you said it there. Double-digit wins is a constant, has been a constant. Again, that didn't happen last year. There's potential for it to not happen this year, but these kids are looking beyond that. And again, I can't single anybody out. There's, it would be very surprising if there was a kid to one decommit and one hit to be kind of the reason for it being a lost Auburn.
Well, that's refreshing to hear that at those guys are that locked in, and it looks like they're really relying on their relationships with each other, which is massive as well. And like you say, players are level headed, right? So they're and I like the fact that they're not going to react to losses the way that fans do, because I'm not going to lie. I'll be straight about it. I think that our fan base is a little crazy with how we handle loss sometimes.
Well, and I don't like. That's part of it. That's part of what makes college football so great. I fully understand the crash outs. I understand it completely. You're talking about Alabama, which is a whole different level. It's funny. Both my parents went to Florida, so it's kind of like my dad is always like, he gives me a call after Oklahoma and is like, oh, is all 23 guys decommitting? It's world is burning. He's like, you guys are what you guys had at Nick Saban, and an Alabama fan who would talk about was ridiculous. It's never going to be repeated. It's like you're welcome back to kind of, I guess, reality, so to speak. Like, you're going to lose games, like you said multiple times on this podcast. It's going to happen. And if these commits, which I, again, don't think they are reacting to a loss, I don't think they were as locked in as maybe they thought or portrayed in the first place.
Well, it's funny you mentioned how we're never going to see that again. That goes for everybody. I mean, we had a bad thunderstorm this morning in Fort Worth, and so I was up at 3:30 in the morning, and it was so loud I wasn't going to go back to sleep. So I actually just flicked on 2020 Alabama highlights. I'm like,
why are you doing that to yourself?
Oh, it was. I was in my glory lane in my bed right here, but to establish your point there, I mean, it was stupid how good that team was, how wide open guys were. Like, and that goes for anybody. You're never going to see anything like that again. Like that.
You had
LSU. That's just over.
You had first rounders playing rock paper scissors to see who had to go to the opposite side of the field. I mean, it was incredible what Alabama was doing, and the stacking of talent, that's just not, in this world of NIL, that's not as possible anymore. I think you're seeing it with, obviously, Georgia's got the number 3 class. They're doing just fine, and I'm not questioning them at all, but they're not stacking talent the way Alabama was, the way they used to be as well. I mean, you mentioned LSU. That was ridiculous amount of talent. That Georgia defense in, I believe it was 2021 or 2020, whatever it was. I mean, yeah, you're not going to see that type of defense again, and the rotational pieces they had. So it's becoming, you're just not going to see it again. And I think if you're an Alabama fan, there's way more to be excited, happy about when it comes to the recruiting world than you maybe thought there would be. I felt like this staff wasn't going to have an issue coming down here. Obviously, coming in the 2025 class, there was a lot to be said about, hey, can he recruit in the South, and can he recruit in state? And then obviously the signing day, Alabama doesn't get a guy in the top 10 in the state, and Auburn gets all of those guys. And I continue to reiterate, you had maybe 1 or 2 of those guys that Alabama really wanted. The other 7 or 8, they weren't going after. You look at this class makeup right now, they've got the number 2 and the number 3 players in Alabama, and the number 5, I believe, as well. The number 1 and the number 3 out of Georgia. So the Southeast is not an issue for Alabama. And then they're also using their ties from across the country. And it goes back to, they have so many California guys. Similarly to, of course, Kalen DeBoer is going to use the Alabama history. Was he not going to use his relationships that he established in Washington? And I go back to, it'd be one thing if some of these guys out west wouldn't be takes for Alabama. I think Dijon Lee, or I know Dijon Lee would have been a take for Alabama and Nick Saban. I mean, and coming off that point, specifically, hey, is the defensive back recruiting going to carry over? It was, guys were jumping over themselves to try to be coached by Nick Saban. Yes, it has. And they're recruiting, and there's still time to go, and they still got to produce and develop the talent. But they are recruiting at as high of a level in the secondary. I know that's may get me killed, but it's true. You go look at the numbers. I mean, they're getting 5-star after 5-star. Again, Jordan Edmonds, Zion Gibson, number 1 and number 6. Xavier Brown, who was a Nick Saban but Xavier Brown was one of the top players in the country. He could have gone wherever he wanted. He obviously trusts his staff, and that goes to Maurice Linguist, defensive backs coach, Jason Jones, who's also in the defensive back room, kind of more primarily safety, but they are rolling right along in the secondary. So it's kind of like I told you so. Like I felt like everything you heard about the staff, and I understand, the fans may not have access, as much information, of course, but it never really felt like a worry. And I was kind of pinpointing this 2026 cycle as kind of my first, I don't know, test for this staff, because I felt like 25, you're a little bit far behind just because you have to do with that current roster. I mean, they've gone a full cycle, and they've got 10 top 100 players. And again, the number 2 class in the country with under 2 weeks to go until early signing period.
Well, and that was, as a fan, of course, when Nick Saban retired, we all knew it was going to happen at some point. And you place him with DeBoer. Like I like to place myself back in January of 2024 and envision being in November of 2025 and what's the feeling, what's the vibe around recruiting, because there's nothing certain back then. I mean, you could have told me, Alabama's going to slip off to 6 or 7 or 8 in 2026, and I'd be like, okay, it's this coaching staff's first full cycle.
Yeah,
they'll build it back up again. But the fact that they're sitting at 2, I'll be honest with you, that's exceeded my expectations, and I'm very, very happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think last year too, and I said I didn't kind of fully judge it, as much as I did this one, but they were behind and they secured a top class. I know it wasn't number 1, but I think to your point, I think Alabama fans would have been thrilled with a top 10 class. They had a top 5 one. I think Alabama fans would thrilled with a top 5 to top 8 class this cycle, 2026. I see them finishing between 2 and number 4. I mean, it's rolling right now. And I think, I'm kind of just have thoughts running through my head. It was what these staff members, what these coaches are preaching in the winter and the spring and the summer to these 2026 commits about like on-field production and this and that. They're seeing it during these trips. I mean, the amount of freshmen that have played this year and significant snaps has been incredible to see, and they're playing well. The Kane Womack rotations at defense. I mean, it feels like there's like 30 different players on the field throughout the game, and doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or reason. And that's not to be taken in a negative light. I'm not a coach. I fully trust Kane Womack, and while we're on it, I feel like Kane Womack deserves a lot more praise for what he's done this year, kind of continuing to improve this defense week after week, and they're looking very good. But like the proof is in the pudding. There's, talking with Zion Gibson the other night, he's like, I watched these DBs warm up for the last 6 home games, and all I want to do is, be in that room now. I'm like, he's like talking about how he's doing the warm-ups on the sideline, and he's talking with Jordan and Edmonds and Jair Edwards, because those are the 3 in the secondary that have, gone very close together. Like, hey, we're going to fit here, and Dijon's going to be here, and I'm going to do this. And it's just, the proof is in the pudding. And a lot of these meetings that these recruits have and commits have with these coaching staff are not only going through their film, they're going through, hey, here's a guy that we coached that we think you can end up being like. And Xavier Griffin's sitting there watching Jahad Campbell highlights. It's a pretty good equation.
Well, yeah, and it gets them excited about it early on. I mean, just being excited about playing ball. Like you can't forget the main thing in all of this. And I know that there's a lot of different elements in college sports now with NIL and other schools constantly trying to poach it, and you having a match this other school's offer and this and that. There's a lot of tape you got to cut through now, a lot of different elements. But, within the doors of a program, if you can still harness that love for football and its purest sense and not just the business around it, you're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, in that locker room, if you don't love football, you're not here for the right reasons, it's not only the staff that's going to call you out. There's the veterans of this program that are going to call you out as well. You're going to learn very quickly, and you're either going to, be with Alabama or you're not. I kind of go back to talking with Keelan Russell's mom during last summer, she was like, you either join Alabama or get knocked off the tracks. And they love that. They love the honesty. They love the kind of just brutal nature of the program. And it's these are the type of kids and families they're going after, guys who absolutely love the game of football, are there for the right reasons and want to get developed and want to get to the league in 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all buying in that process from being a freshman all the way up to your junior year. I mean, we've seen so many stories of it in the past of guys having to wait their turn and sometimes being impatient. Like Najee Harris is a perfect story of that. I know that he was agitated with not starting immediately because he was behind the slew of other future NFL running backs. And he got his chance, and boom, there he was. Ty Simpson's the latest example. Waited, what was it, 3 years to get to this point, and now here he is.
Yeah, and also the other side of it is, you look at this freshman class, and it was, I don't think anybody's surprised that Dijon Lee is playing extended minutes or extended snaps. I don't think anybody's surprised that a Michael Carroll's playing extended snaps as well. But it's London Simmons. He was a 3-star. I will go to my grave saying he shouldn't have been a 3-star, but that's beside the point. He's getting an opportunity, and yes, Jeremiah Beeman went down, and that probably kind of opened the door a little bit, but this staff does not care. If you can play and you do all the right things, you are going to play, whether you're a freshman or you're a 6th year. Latsier Brooks continuing to come on as a bigger and bigger presence, returning some kicks. They're going to him early in games. I think you kind of saw his injury being out for South Carolina was maybe like the best thing that could have happened for him. Obviously, it wasn't serious enough. He's fully back and he's good. But I think Alabama fans saw he was kind of missing in that game. And he's become kind of a bigger target for Ty Simpson. The kid can separate like crazy. And, you'd like for them to find each other down the field a little bit more. That's all different. Probably a whole different type of podcast, getting into the kind of the offensive rhythm of the current team. I know we're focused on recruiting here, but again, the proof is in the pudding, and it's just all kind of a perfect recipe right now.
I love it, and I love to see it continuing to take shape, and I hope that it leads to an Auburn win and a deep playoff run here, and continue to build off of this momentum that we have here, because we have plenty of it. I want to thank you for coming on here today, Brett. I mean, you gave some excellent intel, teeing up early signing day coming, and keeping this season in focus as well. We learned a lot here. Everybody who viewed today learned a lot here. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming on here. It was a great talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a great time. And keep your recruiting departments, keep your GMs kind of in your prayers, because like you said, they've got early signing period, potentially playoff runs, and then the portal opens up. So, and I know Alabama's certainly going to be active in there. So just keep them in your thoughts. Probably not a lot of late hours, early mornings.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of 4-hour sleeps in the future here between the months of, or the end of November to mid-late January. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of 4 and 5 hour sleeps if they're lucky to get that.
And last thing, and then we'll go. And Alabama has a head coach. You could be LSU, you could be Florida, who does not have a head coach right now, and potentially Ole Miss, who could end up. It's just crazy. Be happy with where Alabama's at right now, and that's all I'll say.
And that's a good point. At the end of the day, I'm happy to have somebody. I mean, I couldn't imagine being Ole Miss right now at just that amount of angst on top of having one of your best seasons in program history. Like, that's got to be such a weird mixture of feelings. And I pray for them. I hope that they end up keeping Lane, but that's just at the end of the day, you've got to. I know you get caught in a loss. It's almost like thank yourself for your toothbrush in the morning type thing. Like, we're okay. We're good.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for coming on, Brett. Roll Tide, and thank you all for watching. Have a great day.
No problem, guys.